is fully out there, you know. If, you know, I know Lord Stern called last week for vegetarianism to be a bigger part, but you know, we can't turn ourselves overnight in a primary production. But there is a story to be told, I think, on agriculture that you will see. When I, in a way, it certainly peaked in about '98. The removal of subsidies for sheep, the whole sheep population has decreased by half, and obviously the genuinely uneconomic times especially the dairy industry is having an effect. But another piece of policy, the nitrates directive was applied in Europe in 1993. John Gormley transposed it into domestic legislation in December 2007. We had 14 years to put a piece of legislation which would improve our emissions and which would improve the quality of our groundwater, you know, for all population on that. So I think that will have effect, because in agriculture, yes, it's Michael O'Leary talks in graphic terms about what it's caused, but it's also caused by manure and the application of nitrogen to soil. So I just think, you know, that sector, I probably overlabored it, but I think there's a narrative to be told with Irish agriculture which needs to be really got out there. If you might remember back in about 4 years ago, food miles. Oh, remember food miles and looking at those string beans from Kenya. And New Zealand did a very smart job. They kind of got in there first, and they were able to show whether it was fully efficacious or not, but landing a leg of lamb or an apple for New Zealand versus a more intensive agriculture-based system in the UK, they could land it on Sainsbury's shelf with a lower carbon footprint, you know. Job done. And that became the story. And they kind of won that food mile battle. If you look at it now, it's kind of receded. But I just think we have, that the producers that we have should be putting the carbon footprint of that sirloin steak on the packaging into Asda and Sainsbury's. But anyway, that's where we are on that. You know, what I'd like to take a look at then is with a commentary, I suppose, of each of those. I think, you know, I think the roadmap is placed. Sorry, just energy I think is an important one as well, and I suppose centre point to today. If you look at energy, obviously coupled strongly to this economic growth we had, the higher our GDP, the higher the energy use on that. I suppose we saw a decoupling back in 2001, and really, I suppose the primary driver to that is twofold. Obviously, more and more wind coming onto the grid. We're now today at about 1,200 megawatts of wind. Representing probably, I don't know, about maybe 1,500 turbines or 1,200 turbines. To put that in perspective, Money Point, our coal burning station, is 915 megawatts. So we've got past the Money Point of what we've done already there. And obviously, as more and more as that is applied to the grid, the carbon intensity of our energy production then recedes. The other area on that is 62% of our electricity generated today comes from natural gas. So we burn. I was at a very modest power station down in Poolbeg, not one of the old ones there, and they generate between 8 and 9% of the total electricity consumed from a very, very modern combined cycle gas turbine station down there. So gas is, if you look at the scale of carbon intensity, about 900 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour at coal. I think it's about 650, 700 oil. Gas is, turf is up there as well, obviously. Gas is half, it's about 450 grams of CO2. So by converting to gas and the wind, we managed to take that down. And I really do think the policy drivers with the target that are set in place will continue that one down. So the last one, really, you know, if you look back, and let's not get all angry with ourselves, but if you look back at where we really, really messed up, and it's transport. If you look at that red line there, you know, and you say to yourself, you know, if there's things have happened and we've done things wrong, but if you look at the context of today's meeting, what's the one thing that we really, really messed up on? Transport. We've trebled our transport emissions on that. And why have we done that? We made decisions to put €6 for every €1 in public transport. We put €6 on roads. We make decisions. Anybody tried to travel internally in France, I think you could probably fly between Paris and Marseille. But we want to fly everywhere. We want to fly 200-kilometre journeys on that. And the government is subsidising those internal flights by €250, you know? And we complain about the cost of it's cheaper to go on a plane than it is to travel by train. We're building highways, we're building, international grade motorways to Waterford. No disrespect to Waterford, but I think the total traffic volume is about 18,000 cars a day. I live near the main Drumcondra Road, more past that per day. And we really did it because we have a love affair with cars, we produce roads and we generate cars. And then, there's people here who can talk more at length on spatial planning. We want to live everywhere where we want on that. And we have wedded ourselves. And this, if you look back to the legacy of our emissions profile, and you look back to that 10 million tonnes between 1990 and 2006, almost entirely delivered by transport, because we love cars. 97% of our emissions from that, of that 15 million tonnes, is a result of car driving.
Just a point of information, that the energy here is done with pure electricity, whereas the residential and industry commercial is non-electricity.
It's non-electricity. Yes, that's a good point because it's relevant later on that. That's at a generation point, and that would be natural gas and solid fuels and home heating oil on that in kind of emissions, primary emissions associated with residential. But anyway, I suppose, but that is the one. And you know what? I don't think I'm not sure we're there. We're still cutting ribbons on motorways and bypasses and this and that. And yes, some of the other methods have improved. And just look outside the door here. With the city life scheme. And that just is, I think, such a strong message. That you can do it. You can cycle 5-10 kilometres. We can. Well, I don't know what it's going to take. One would hope that the carbon tax would again start this weaning process of that. But I think in terms of the infrastructure built, every region of Ireland had this idea that if I have a motorway and an airport, regional development follows. And we must be scratching our heads at this point, saying, what really was that all about? Really was that? Was this the idea that as long as you get to an airport somewhere in 2 hours, that everything else would follow? Anyway, it's becoming a bit of a polemic.